5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey everybody, Shags here with another episode of the Curtis Tucker Podcast. Appreciate you guys checking in, stopping by, subscribing, all of that good stuff. If you guys are listening to this podcast on a podcasting platform, you guys can also go to youtube.com/@CurtisTucker and you can watch the video. I'm waving at you. You can see inside Shaggy Duck Studio. If you've noticed on some of the last couple of episodes, I've been moving around the studio a little bit, giving you some different views of the studio. And I will be doing an episode here pretty soon of just showing you the actual Shaggy Duck Studio, because I have done some changes, some rearranging, and added some stuff. So just going to let you guys check that out and see what's going on there. If you guys are watching me, wave at you on YouTube. Don't forget that if you guys are driving or cutting the grass or doing something like that, that you can just listen to the podcast episode on almost all of the major podcasting platforms. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. All those different platforms, they give you benefits the more subscribers you have. So the more subscribers I can get, the more things that I can do with those, and eventually the more episodes that I will be able to do for you guys. So I think I'm on track so far to do a episode every week. That was my goal for 2026, is just to keep it going, come up with no matter what goofy idea that I'm going to come up with, just to get an episode out. And so this is going to be one of those goofy episodes where it just kind of dawned on me. I was thinking, my co-host and I, Todd Wheeler, we do the 70s Buzz podcast, and every now and then Todd will bring something up on the podcast and I'll say, oh, I've got that in a box in the garage. And he'll say, of course you do. And he kind of makes fun of me for keeping a lot of stuff that I had from the past. And actually, when I sat down to kind of think about this episode, actually, I don't have that much stuff. You would think that I would have just a garage full and boxes of stuff from when I was a kid or even from college. And actually, I don't. I got to looking at it, and I've gone through that box and I've cleaned things out. And, you know, even originally, before I did all that, I didn't have that much stuff. So it was kind of cool to be able to think about the things that I do have, and that's what this episode's about. It's going to be 22 things that I still have from my childhood, and that basically is, I'd say 90% of this list is from the 70s. There are a few items that are from the 80s, but overall, it's kind of from basically 45 to 50 years ago. All of this stuff I've had for that long or longer. And so it's going to be kind of fun to go over all these. So you guys let me know, you know, what do you guys have? What have you kept? What have you collected? What memento or, you know, just sentimental value or item have you just not been able to get rid of, or maybe some of these items, maybe you didn't even realize you had it until you went through some boxes or you found it in a closet or an attic or something. Let me know some of the items that you guys have had for 40 and 50 years. Hit me up at shags@shaggyduck.com or curtis@curtistucker.com. I love to get email from you guys, so let me know. Or even just leave it in a review on the podcasting app. I need to start checking and seeing if there's any reviews, or leave it in the comments there on YouTube. I'd really appreciate that. So this is my list. And it started out strong. Like I say, you know, Todd makes fun of me, so it seemed like I was going to have tons of stuff. But trying to reach that 22 mark, as I was getting closer to the end, it was getting a little bit tougher to think of things that I'd had. So I actually went through some of my drawers, folders, and things like that to come up with my list of 22. I'm going to start out with kind of a big deal, which is kind of weird that I have this collection, but I still have my collection of magic from the early to mid 70s when I did magic shows. So my mom used to work out at the Air Force Base here in Enid, and they used to sell, she worked in a store where they sold fatigues and just everything that an Air Force guy would need. Well, they had foot lockers, and so they used to sell those wooden foot lockers that the Air Force guys used to have. And so she bought one for me, and she painted it black. And then if you turned it on its side and flipped the lid up, the lid would kind of act as a tabletop, and you could take the tray out, and she cut out a slot where there was these little two wooden things on each end that would keep the drawer from dropping down into the bottom. But if you leaned the foot locker on its side and cut those notches out, you could slide that shelf in, and you'd have this shelf facing you, and then the bottom of the foot locker would face out towards people that were looking at you. And anyway, we were able to make a little magic stand out of that foot locker by doing that. And then what she did was she painted on the bottom of the foot locker a cartoon picture of me with holding a rabbit and a top hat, and it said, I think, Curtis's Magic Show. I haven't seen it. I haven't lifted the foot locker up and looked at the bottom in eons. I guess I ought to do that and take a picture. But so that was painted on the bottom. So when I would set everything up, that would be the front of my little magic stand. And then I would be able to do all my magic on the top. So I've still got that foot locker full of magic tricks. And I've probably got, I've got some really cool, fairly large dove pans and a magic genie tube and a dice box. Some decent sized magic tricks that I had back then, because I would do magic shows and birthday parties and things like that. And then also in that box is I believe, a complete collection of Magic Magazine, which was a magazine that came out in the 70s for magicians, and I subscribed to it. So I got every issue, and I think I even subscribed to the next season, and then they, I don't know, went out of business or quit printing. So I believe I've got every issue of that. And then I've got Mark Wilson's Complete Course in Magic. It's a big, thick, black book that goes through all of these different magic tricks. And then I've got a whole bunch of magic books, just book after book of different magic tricks. So that whole chest is full of magic books, magic magazines, and all kinds of stuff. And that has just followed me around for years and years. And I don't know exactly why I haven't tried to sell it. It would be really cool for some young kid that wanted to get into magic. It is like a complete magic show, and then all of the instructions to do hundreds, if not thousands, of other magic tricks. So I don't know. One of these days I might have to think about selling that. I don't know if kids are that involved in magic anymore like they used to be. There used to be like magic shops all over the place in different towns. So that is kind of a big thing that I have. And then to kind of go along with that, and I probably should have got him out. He's right over here in a kind of a sealed jar is my hand puppet. And he is a kind of a furry bird with a yellow felt beak and these really long orange felt legs. And he just looks like a goofy bird. And back in the day, Staten and I would do a puppet show after we would do our magic show. And Staten would play his guitar and sing, and then I would get behind the magic box and I would do the puppets. And so he had a dog puppet which I can't, just jumped out of my head what the name of his dog was. And then I had my bird puppet, which I named Emmett the Emu for some reason. I don't know why, but so it was Emmett the Emu. And then after we kind of quit doing our magic show and puppet show, I just kept that puppet, and then eventually I stuck it in a jar, a pretty big jar, to kind of preserve it so it wouldn't, the felt and the fur and everything wouldn't age too much. So anyway, he's stuck in a little jar over there. But we used to go to Crossroads Mall in Oklahoma City, and they had a store. I don't think it was Spencer's. I think there was a kind of a toy store in the mall, and they had like this huge rack like in the middle of the store that had puppets on it. We would go there, and those were our two big puppets. And then I think we had some smaller, cheaper puppets. And then as a kid, I would even make my own puppets. So we had a whole bunch of different puppets. And then over here also is a red, I think it's a little bear puppet that we used in our show that Staten had kept, and he just sent it to me, or gave it to me last year. He had kept it after all these years. So those were from the mid 70s. And then another big collection that I have is my comic book collection. It's pretty cool because I've probably got somewhere around 200, probably a little over 200 comic books, and they are all pretty much my comic books, meaning I bought them and I read them and I read them and I traded them and I read them. And probably, I would say 60% of them I bought used at pawn shops and garage sales and things like that. And then probably 40% of them I bought brand new at the gas station or the convenience store. So, and I kind of quit collecting in the late 70s. So basically they're 50s, 60s, and the majority of them are 70s comic books. A lot of 15-cent comic books, a few 12-cent, some 20-cent. But, I think the majority I have are Superman and action comics. And then there's Fantastic Four, Jimmy Olsen, Lois Lane, Superdog, Supergirl, just a lot of those type of comic books. And the comic books were kind of a thing that you could always just pull out at any time and read them and flip through them. So I just always kept them in a box or something, and they've always followed me around. And for some reason, I've just never sold those. So I've still got all of my comic books. And then some random, like, single things, which I'm not exactly sure why I have these. I'm sure I thought they were cool, and I think I just ended up putting them in a little kind of a memory box, and so that box has followed me around. But I've only got one Hot Wheel car and I used to have a lot of Hot Wheels and a lot of Matchbox cars back in the day, and probably sold most of them at a garage sale. And then the ones that were kind of torn apart and didn't have wheels, I'm sure I probably just threw away. But I still have a Hot Wheels Red Line Blue Classic 32 Ford Vicky. And I think those were made from 68 to somewhere in the early 70s. And the red line are the tires that have the red line on them. And so those, for some reason, I guess they're a little more collectible, a little more valuable. Mine is in pretty good shape. It's not in, new or packaged shape, but it's in pretty good condition just because it's been sitting in a box for 50 years. But of course, the year or two or three that I played with it, but it's not super scratched up. So anyway, one Hot Wheels car is all I have. And then I have this random finger puppet, and it is Oscar the Grouch from Sesame Street. And the reason I have it is because in junior high and high school, I kind of had this green fetish, and so I collected green hats. And then I also collected pretty much anything else fun that I could find that was green. And somehow, somewhere along the line, and this was in the 80s, early 80s, I bought and I liked that character on Sesame Street. Well, and number one, I liked him because he was green, but another reason was, I don't know, he was just kind of a cool character. So I've got it's kind of a plastic, but you can kind of bend him, and they came out with the finger puppets for pretty much all of the characters on the show. But for some reason, I only bought Oscar the Grouch, and you can go to eBay and they're all over there. So still got Oscar the Grouch. Another large collection that I have, I've got my marble collection, and so a lot of this stuff is either over here or over here on these shelves or in that room there. But my marble collection is made up of, old timey 60s and 70s marbles where they're real marble and you can't see through them. They're all swirly and colorful. And then I do have some of the clear ones where you can see kind of design and swirls in them. And then I've got some smaller ones that probably came from like I don't know, some game pieces. But I've got a bubblegum machine that I put them all in, and that's where they've stayed for several decades. So my marble collection has stayed in a bubblegum machine, and I've got some pretty old marbles in there. And I played with marbles a lot as a kid, probably more than I played with G.I. Joes, more than I played with Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars. Because I would pretend the marbles were, sometimes they were cars, sometimes they were cowboys and Indians on horses, sometimes they were just marbles. And, I would build roller coaster track out of Hot Wheels track and other track, and I would combine them, and I would have these marble roller coasters all over my room. And then, you could just take, I'd take like all the blue colored marbles were one gang and all the red colored marbles were another gang. And then you could just kind of roll them and it would kind of look like they were charging each other. And I don't know, I just used to think of all kinds of fun stuff to do with marbles. And so marble collection is something I'll probably never get rid of. And a lot of these, like now comic books, I've added a few over the years just because I've found them here and there. Marbles, not really. I mean, most of these things that I'm talking about, it's not like I continue to collect them. I haven't bought new magic tricks since the 70s. So it's just stuff that I've had and I've pretty much left as is since the 70s or the 80s. So I haven't added to my marble collection at all. And that bubblegum machine is almost full, so I wouldn't be able to get a whole lot more in there. One of the cooler things that I still have from the 70s are my cassette tapes. And we're talking not like, rock and roll cassette tapes of groups. These are the cassette tapes that we recorded ourselves. And so a lot of them have our garage band rehearsals on them, which sound really, really bad just because they're cassette tapes that were, the recorder was set up in the middle of the room, not near a microphone, and we just basically recorded us in a room. And then I've also got recordings of Dr. Demento, skits. Some of the funniest tapes are the skits that, we used to make up our own skits, like Saturday Night Live skits, and we would just record each other, or, two or three of us doing these stupid skits. And then also when we would call into Lester Boogie Michaels on Boogie Check down in Oklahoma City, he would pre-record that like 10 minutes or 30 minutes ahead. So once we knew we'd gotten on the show, we would sit down with our little microphone and then record the show. And so I've got recordings of us on boogie check back in the 70s, which is really cool. And then also mixtapes. So, there's some tapes that just have random songs that I liked during the 70s, but I didn't have the cassette of the group, or I just wanted a random mixtape. So I've got a lot of those as well. And then another interesting thing. So my favorite teacher of all time was Mrs. McMillan, who I had in the 6th grade. And in the 6th grade, that's where I met Staten, and also had Brendan in that class. And so us three are part of the 5 that I'm writing the book about that grew up on West Broadway. And then the other 2 went to McKinley at the same time, but they were 2 years younger. But the 3 of us that were all the same age all had Mrs. McMillan. And she's the one that had us read The Hobbit back in 1974. I believe it was 74, 75, 74. And then also at one point during class, she had us write letters to pen pals. And so I had a pen pal from Korea, a little girl, probably around the same age. And we wrote each other for quite a while, I think for a couple of years. And at one point, one Christmas, so I've still got those letters from my pen pal. I've got a little picture of her, a little black and white, like a school picture of her. And one Christmas, she sent me a knit hat, like a winter hat, with this really long stringy ball on the top of it, which I never wore. I just kept. So I've still got the hat and these 2 little figures made out of wood, and they look like little Oriental man and wife. And she sent me those, and I've still got those wooden figures as well. So I've still got all of my pen pal stuff from back in the 70s. I thought it would be kind of interesting to see, now that we have social media, to see if there's any way I could track her down through social media. So I may try that one of these days and kind of document it. And that would make a kind of a fun episode to see if I found her or didn't find her, but just the process of trying to find her. I also got a stack, if you guys are listening, probably 5 inches, almost 6 inches high of baseball, basketball, and football cards. Now, I wasn't a huge card collector, but I did collect some, and the ones that I did collect. Now, I think I did have a bigger collection at one time, and my mom threw most of them away, and then I recollected, and that stack, like I say, of about 5 inches, I've kept ever since the 70s, and it's a mix of baseball, basketball, and football. Off the top of my head, the most famous people, my most famous football one is Joe Namath. And my most famous, or not famous, well, the one I like is the basketball one is Pat Riley when he was a player before he was the coach of the Lakers. And then baseball wise, I think I've got some decent older baseball guys. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head, but I've still got that small collection of baseball, football, basketball cards. And they're not in, quality collectible condition, but they're not in bad condition either, because again, I stuck them in a box and they've been in there forever. So still got those. I've still got, and it's a little itty bitty picture, but I've still got the photo that my mom took of me and got developed and then gave me, of me holding the Farrah Fawcett poster in 1976. And so I've had photo albums, and I've just always kept that original photograph. I don't know, and I doubt I could ever find the negatives. Now, they might be somewhere, but to find them would be quite a search. So I've only got the original, and like I say, it's kind of a weird little sized picture. It's not a very big picture. And of course, that's the picture that after she passed away, it was on CNN, and it's been in a lot of books and a lot of documentaries on Farrah, and it's on display in a museum in Washington, D.C., but a really cool picture. I've got my Farrah, not my original Farrah Fawcett poster, but a different Farrah Fawcett poster right over here on the wall. But kind of a fun picture to have. So, and of course, I've got a lot of pictures from the 70s, but I don't really consider those, because most people do. Most people have their pictures, but there's that one picture. I've got a Ringer t-shirt, the old t-shirts that had the color on the neck and the sleeve, called Ringer tees. And so in high school, I started drawing these cartoon characters, which I think I called them my family, my little family or something. And they were what I also called big nose characters. Every character started out with a big circle, and that was his nose. And then I would draw some type of character around him, and then I would name them some pretty unusual names. And so the first one I ever did, the most famous one, was Joe Vacation. And so I got Joe Vacation copyrighted. I actually filled out the form and sent it into the copyright office, and I've still got the forms and all that from my original copyright of him. But also had some other characters. One of the other characters was Real Neil, and he was this character that was dressed in a raincoat, but he had some sunglasses on, and he always had a surfboard by him. He was kind of a beach character. And also hung out with a guy named Neil, who worked in a print shop, not a silk screen shop, but a print shop. So he knew about printing. So at one point in the late 70s, he had a whole bunch of Real Neil t-shirts printed up, and they were just two color designs, kind of the outline of this Real Neil character. And I think it said Real Neil is cool. And he just wanted one because his name was Neil. And I think he got a few others printed so he could sell them and make his money back. And he gave me at least one. And so I've still got that Ringer t-shirt from way back in the late 70s. My Real Neil is cool Ringer tee. So that was pretty cool because a lot of people didn't get their own t-shirt silk screened, way back then. I've also got, right behind the camera, which you guys can't see, is my first cat calendar that I won, that I drew in 1988 and won for the 1989 calendar. And it's kind of a cartoon scene of a whole bunch of different things, and every little thing is the name or a clue to the name of a rock band. But the reason I thought of that, and where I got that idea of all that cartooning and a whole bunch of stuff in one, smushed together in one area, was those cartoon maps that you used to be able to get at the amusement parks. And so Staten and I would get to go to Six Flags over Mid-America in the summertime when we would go on vacation with his parents. And then he and I would take trips down to Six Flags over Texas. And so I still have my Six Flags over Mid-America map from 1976. And then I've got my Six Flags over Texas map from 1978. And I've kept them because I liked, they're colorful, they're fun, and they've got all those little trees and buildings and rides and roller coasters and everything almost hidden in the map. You have to really stare at the map to be able to see everything. And so I just stuck those in a file, and I've had them ever since. So I've got those two maps. One thing that I didn't really keep with me the entire time, but I used it a lot in the 70s. Then my mom had it. And then when she passed away, I went through tons of boxes and bags and stuff to find it because we didn't know where it had disappeared to. And I was able to re-find it, and it was her 8mm movie camera, which Staten and I used to use to film ourselves skateboarding and our friends doing stupid, goofy things. And then we would do a lot of those stop motion, like making a pine cone move or a dog disappear or things like that. And so it was a Mansfield Holiday Electromatic 8 was it's over here on the shelf as well. And so I have not put any 8mm film in it since I have refound it, but I should do that and then make that an episode of filming some stuff and then getting that developed, which I'm assuming you can still get those developed somewhere. That I don't know. I'll have to find out about that. So still have that camera. I've got all of my report cards all the way from elementary school. So back in elementary school, a report card was just a single 8.5 by 11. And then each semester, the teacher would give you your grades. And then at the end of the year, you would get that single sheet with your grades and your attendance and any notes and everything. And then when you moved into junior high, the report cards got small and you had one for every class. So usually I think you got 6 every year, and they came in like a little manila envelope. And so I've got all my junior high report cards, and then I think they also used those little ones in high school. So I've got all my high school. So basically I've got all of my report cards from, I don't know, probably 2nd grade all the way through high school graduation. I think I might even have 1st grade. I went to 1st grade in Burns Flat, Oklahoma. So it was a different school system, but I think I even have that one, and that was really kind of a kindergarten. So I guess I probably do have 1st grade because that was at McKinley, even though I started the year there late. So I got all my report cards. Supposedly my granddad was a huge train enthusiast because his dad was a caboose train guy. He would ride on the train on the caboose. So I've got some cool train stuff, but I guess they would put together O-gauge train sets, and they had so much train track and trains that it would run all the way around their upstairs in their house, from room to room. And then after he passed away, they boxed it all up. Everybody talked about how cool this huge train set was my whole growing up. So I never got to see it or play with it. My uncle never got it out and set it up for his kids. And he passed away. My mom passed away. So my cousins, I think, have it in boxes in a garage, supposedly. And I don't think anybody has probably seen it in 60, 70 years. I'm assuming it's there somewhere, but I don't know. But somehow, either part of it, the collection was taken out, or my mom or my uncle bought me my own O-gauge train. Now, didn't have a huge amount of track, just enough to make a small circle with a couple of straight sides. So more of like a track that people would run, for like around a football field, kind of like that. And I think I had 2 engines and maybe about 4 to 6 cars. And then I had 2 different transformers that would run the trains. Now today, pretty much all I have is some of the trains and just a little bit of the track. I don't know. I probably ought to get it all out and see if I have enough track to even make a big circle. I don't have the transformers anymore, and I don't believe the engines work anymore, but I wouldn't know because I can't plug it in. So, but I do still have a lot of that train stuff. A fun little thing that I found in my little treasure box. Again, I kind of had that. I liked green. So at some point when I was a kid in the 70s, one of the big things back then was a lucky rabbit's foot. And weirdly enough, these literally were real rabbit's feet that, somehow they chemically did something to them to preserve them. And then they would, chop the foot off, and then they would put this metal thing on the end with a little keychain, and then they would color them, dye them. And so I bought a green rabbit's foot, and I still have it. A little bit of the fur has come off over the years, not much, but I mean, you can like feel everything in the foot and the little pointy. I mean, it's a rabbit's foot. So I've still got my little rabbit's foot. My mom was a big bowler back in the 70s. And so she bowled in a bowling league, usually on Wednesday nights. And then the team that she bowled with, they bowled so much that they would go usually to Las Vegas and compete in bowling tournaments in Las Vegas. And one year she went to Vegas and bought me it's a plastic bank, piggy bank, or, coin bank, hard plastic, and it looks like a slot machine, and it's got a working handle. And so when you pull the handle down and let it go, it spins the three windows, and it has fruit on it. And, money doesn't come out because it's just kind of a hollow plastic thing, but it was just a little money bank. So I've kept that, and it still works, which is pretty cool. So I can still, sometimes I'd sit there for 30 minutes and try to get 3 bananas or 3 of whatever, and sometimes it would take half an hour to do it. But I've still got that. It's pretty cool. It reminds me of my mom and her old bowling days. Right over here on this table, which you can't see, but right there, I've got a Radio Shack calculator. And I believe it is probably a junior high calculator. They gave you the little school list, and you had to have so many pens and notebooks and all that. And one class required a calculator. And so that was just really not even, I guess, what they call a scientific calculator. This is just a real basic, know-nothing calculator in that little plastic pouch. And I've still got the plastic pouch, and it's all in great shape. It all looks great and works great and all that. So I've still got that. I thought that was kind of fun. And then probably a collection that I should have kept, but I didn't. But somewhere around, I think probably 2008, we were moving from a house over here to this house the first time we lived here. And I was just, cleaning out boxes and the garage just so we didn't have to move so much stuff. And so I had a whole box of vinyl albums, all of my vinyl albums that I had collected throughout the 70s and a little bit in the 80s. And at that point, we were having a garage sale, and I thought, well, I'll put my albums in the garage sale and sell them individually, and that way, I'll have some spending money, and then whatever I don't sell, I'll still have those albums. And the thinking was, I no longer had a turntable. Everybody had gone to CDs, and I think streaming had already. I think the not the iPhone, but the I can't even, iPod. The iPod had come out. So people were getting their music digitally on iPods, or they had CDs, and I did not have a turntable, and there was a lot of bands that I liked that didn't have their songs on vinyl, and I didn't think bands were going to continue to release any music on vinyl. So to me, and the box was fairly heavy because it had quite a few albums in it. I was like, why do I keep hauling this around? These albums are going to get old and ruined, and I might as well, give them to somebody. So a guy from here in town that I know came by our garage sale, and he offered me $50 for the whole box. And, I was like, oh, wow, $50 spending money. So I sold my albums, or like I say, around 2008. So I had them for quite a while. And then, of course, vinyl made a comeback, and I bought a turntable, and I liked my album collection so much, I've pretty much bought my entire album collection back one at a time. But I was cleaning out my garage here a year ago, or maybe 2 years, somewhere between a year and 2 years ago, and I was going through every box. I was going to look through everything to see, what could be thrown away and what I wanted to keep. And I opened up this one kind of a flat box that I probably hadn't looked at obviously in decades. And in that box were two albums from the 70s. And one of them was Kansas 2 for the Show. And the other one was a 10-inch Cheap Trick album. And so I was able to keep my original albums from the 70s. So I get to add vinyl albums to my list of things that I kept. That album, the Cheap Trick album, was the Found All the Parts album. And like I say, it was a 10-inch, so it was smaller than the normal. But, one of my favorite bands in the 70s was Kansas. So I thought that was really cool that I still had my original 2 for the Show album. And it's right over here on the shelf in my collection. Another thing that I've kept from the 70s, and I don't know exactly why. I don't think it was on purpose that I kept this one, but for some reason I kept one TV guide, and it was from January of 1978, and it had Kojak on the cover. And I think what happened was I just had a box of stuff in the 70s, and I just grabbed a TV guide and threw it in, either thinking, I'm going to save this, or it just accidentally got in there. But it's not in bad shape. My mom bought a TV guide every week. You didn't, back in the day, in the 70s, we didn't have, a guide on the TV. So if you wanted to know what was coming up or what was on. And I was cool because with the TV guide, you could plan out your week, and know, what was going to be on TV towards the weekend. And that way you wouldn't miss a show, because if you missed a show in the 70s, you had to wait till the next year to see it again. So anyway, one TV guide from 1978. And then looking through my stuff, I've got two Mad magazines. Both of them are from 1977, and one of them is just a regular Mad magazine, and the other one is what they called a special edition, and it's a little bit thicker. And really the reason I kept those was I liked Don Martin's cartoons that were in them, and so I would, when I was drawing cartoons as a professional, back before computers, the more cartoon, we called it a morgue, but the more stuff you had in your morgue, then you didn't have to go to an encyclopedia or figure out how to draw something. If you wanted to, the more cartoons that you had, the more things you could look at if you needed to draw like a car or a lawnmower or, whatever. And so I think I kept those just to have that Don Martin style as I was drawing my cartoons, because my early cartoons, and even some of those up here on the cat calendar, look a little bit like the Don Martin cartoon characters. And so I started off drawing mine like his, and then, kind of started making them my own after a long time. And then the last one, number 22, I haven't been counting these off, but the last one, I think I got 22 on here, hopefully. Number 22 is I have a KOFM FM 104 radio window sticker from the late 70s, and it is signed by the DJ Lester Boogie Michaels. And he, of course, was the DJ that ran the show Boogie Check. And Boogie Check is the show that we would call in and act really goofy and all that. And then I would record on the cassettes. And we've even done a podcast episode about that. But anyway, so I've still got that window sticker with Lester Boogie Michaels' signature. Come to think of it, I need to put it in a frame and add it to my autograph wall right there. So anyway, there are my 22 things that I have kept for over 40 years, most of them around 50 years. All of them are in pretty good shape. Some of them are super random. I'm not sure why I kept them. But you guys go through, think about what you guys have. Do you guys have a box of stuff? And again, this is stuff that I've kept from the 70s. Now, real quick, let me add on that there's some stuff that I wish I had kept. Number one was the vinyl albums, which I didn't, but I have repurchased all of the vinyl albums that I had. Number two is my blue Grintech skateboard, which I somehow sold or whatever, but I found it on eBay, almost brand new. It looked almost brand new. I bought it and the black one, which is the one Staten rode, and I gave it to him. So I've gotten that. So I've gotten my albums back. I've gotten my skateboard back. Another thing that I wish I'd kept was my Kalamazoo, my first electric guitar. I've got a whole episode on how I found an exact copy of that. So it's over here, right here on this shelf as well. My red Kalamazoo guitar looks exactly like the one I had in the 70s. It's like a 68 model. And then my banana seat bike, which I was kind of fuzzy on what it was called, what it looked like. And I was just trying to find a picture of it for years and years on the internet and could never find anything. And one day it just popped up on Facebook, and I've got a whole episode on it, that a guy 2 blocks from here that I knew had bought one at a garage sale and was selling it on Facebook. And it literally was an exact copy of my banana seat bike from the 70s. And so I think I paid him $100. I literally ran over and snagged it and walked it home. And so I've gotten my banana seat bike, my skateboard, my guitar, my vinyl albums. And I think that is all of the major things. Maybe the only other thing, it'd be kind of fun to have my original Panasonic cassette recorder, because, man, I use that cassette recorder a lot. It would be fun to have that. And that's probably about it. So anyway, again, let me know if you guys have something that you've kept because it's sentimental or just reminds you of something, or just because it was in a box and you just never got to it to throw it away. But let me know. I'd love to hear what your list of things is. Email me, shags@shaggyduck.com or curtis@curtisducker.com, or, like I say, leave a comment on this video on YouTube, or I think I have comments turned on the Curtis Tucker blog. So basically what I do is I'm recording this as an audio podcast, and then I'm also videoing this as a video for YouTube. And then what I do is I take everything in my mind that I've said, because I've got some notes here, and I will feed these into ChatGPT, and then it will write a blog post of basically everything on here that I've said, and it'll number it and everything for me. And then what I do is I go to curtistucker.com, which is my blog, and then I've also started a Substack, which is at the Curtis Tucker, and I'll take this written copy and put it on the Substack and also put it on the blog. And at the bottom of the blog, I will embed the audio podcast, and then I'll also embed the video from YouTube and then upload that to the internet. So if you go to curtistucker.com, you're going to pretty much see most of my podcast episodes and be able to click on them and listen to them right there, or watch them on the video right there. So you can get pretty much everything or find everything if you'll go to curtistucker.com that I've got going on. And I've just added this whole AI craze. Everybody is making caricatures of themselves. So I've just added a new one as kind of my new branding for Curtis Tucker. You know, not to say that I won't change it, but just because everybody's going through that phase. So it's kind of a fun picture of me holding up Mr. Saucy Pants. So he is in most of the headers and the logos, and I'm probably going to do a t-shirt. I'm working on a t-shirt design, which would love for you guys to purchase to help spread word about the podcast and all that, which will have me and Mr. Saucy Pants on it, but I'll have that coming out soon. So anyway, appreciate you guys listening. Again, subscribe to the podcast and the video channel. I appreciate you. See ya.